Now, China's Xi Jinping has described ties with the United States as the most important in the world, as Beijing hosted a state banquet for the American President Donald Trump. At the state banquet, Xi asserted China, the US should become partners and not rivals. The Chinese president, in fact, closed his speech with a toast to the development and the future of the two nations.
Yes. President Trump and I had in-depth exchanges on China-US relations and international and regional dynamics. We both believe that the China-US relationship is the most important bilateral relationship in the world. We must make it work and never mess it up. Both China and the United States stand to gain from cooperation and lose from confrontation.
Now, for his part, Trump invited the Chinese president, his wife Peng Liyuan, to visit the United States on the 24th of September this year. The American president said that the ties between the two nations are the most consequential in the entire world.
We had extremely positive and productive conversations and meetings today with the Chinese delegation earlier. And this evening is another cherished opportunity to discuss among friends some of the things that we discussed today, all good for the United States and for China. And it was a great honor to be with you. Please.
And after holding the meeting with the American President Donald Trump, Xi said safeguarding peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait is the biggest common denominator between China and the United States. Now, Taiwan said that it had been paying close attention to Trump and Xi's summit and has been in close touch with the US side. It further added that the real threat to peace, which risks triggering a crisis, is China's ongoing military harassment. Now, Trump, in fact, began his official engagements in Chinese capital as his motorcade moved through the streets of Beijing en route to the Great Hall of the People. His Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping hosted a welcome ceremony outside the landmark state building located west of Tiananmen Square. Trump shook hands with Xi, marking the 7th face-to-face meeting between the two leaders and also the pair's first meeting in China since November of 2017. And after greeting each other, the two leaders strolled down a red carpet and then shook hands with members of their respective delegation. The school children also welcomed the American president, jumping up and down in unison, some of them holding American and Chinese flags. The American president and his Chinese counterpart shared smiles as they strolled past them. Trump later also thanked the children.
I think I was particularly impressed by those children. They were happy. They were beautiful. The military is obvious. It couldn't be better, but those children were amazing.
Trump and Xi then moved to a red and gold dais. The two leaders participated in a troop review, inspecting a guard of honor of several lines of Chinese troops. The American president was also accorded a 21-gun salute. As the U.S. delegation entered the Great Hall, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is in fact the Secretary of State and amongst the senior officials, accompanied Trump, displayed noticeable enthusiasm while engaging in an animated conversation with the Chinese officials. It was right ahead of the high-stakes meeting, which lasted for over 2 hours and witnessed discussions on many thorny issues, including Taiwan. All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got retired Captain Alok Bansal, is in fact the Director of India Foundation and Executive Director of South Asian Strategic Affairs. Mr. Bansal, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Now, we heard from the two leaders who have said that this is in fact the most important relationship of this century. In your assessment, looking at the optics and also what is driving it, what do you think is the key takeaway as Donald Trump is meeting Xi Jinping in Beijing?
See, firstly, there is no doubt that being the two most powerful nations on the earth, this meeting is important. But what one gets is that President Trump is seeking this good relationship with China, because at this point of time, he's actually hemmed in on the home front. So he needs this good relations with China. And I think there is too much of talk, but I don't know how it will execute, because both have talked about open Strait of Hormuz, freedom of navigation through Strait of Hormuz, but nothing concrete has come out of it. As far as talks are concerned, I think it's good. It shows that the two powers are trying to come together. But at the same time, it also shows that the previous US administrations, which have been trying to build up certain coalitions against China, which were not directly, but I think intended against Chinese technological dominance, are probably virtually dead and buried.
Now, Donald Trump in the past has blown hot and cold on China, and he's also started this tariff war that we've witnessed in his second tenure as the president. Xi Jinping said something interesting today. He said that the Chinese rejuvenation and also Donald Trump's Make America Great Again philosophy can exist side by side. In your assessment, can Donald Trump make America great again at a time when China has clearly taken the lead as the manufacturing hub of the world?
See, as far as Donald Trump is concerned, I think his statements need to be taken with a pinch of salt, because what he says today in China, he may turn back once he goes back to the United States. To my mind, I think China is the manufacturing hub and will continue to export goods to US. And I think it is not extremely detrimental to US economy or US employment. The only thing what we need to look at it is that, because since President Trump embarked his presidency on this particular belief that he needs to cut down imports from other countries and increase productivity, especially manufacturing in United States, his core vote bank may not like this sort of opening up to China. But to my mind, I think he has already realized that the policies that he has been pursuing are not going in the right direction. And already the inflation in US has hit significantly high levels. So I think realizing that he would probably want some face-saving mechanism in the short term so that things can cool down back home.
All right, now China is the nation that purchases nearly 80 to 90% of the sanctioned Iranian oil. So if there is one nation that has leverage on Iran, then it is China. At a time when the United States appears to be stuck in the Strait of Hormuz, where it seems to lack a coherent strategy. In your assessment, do you think the Chinese president has an incentive to help Donald Trump out in the Strait of Hormuz?
That's what I said, because both have talked about freedom of navigation. The Strait of Hormuz should be free. Now, obviously, it has not specified whether Iranian oil will also be allowed to be exported, because the Iranians have said very clearly, either everybody's goods move freely or nobody's moves. So that's their assertion. So obviously, China, which is dependent on Iranian oil to a very great extent, would want that they should be able to import crude from Iran. At the same time, US would want that the energy resources from the Gulf are able to move out to their allies and can cool down the prices of the crude, which have actually been hitting high. So these are the two objectives, and I'm sure they must have worked out some way via media, because this would also give President Trump some sort of a face-saving mechanism to climb down the high horse that he has been riding as far as Iran's issue is concerned.
Right. Now, my final question to you, Captain Bansal, is this. Now, Donald Trump, of course, sees himself as the leader of the most powerful nation in the world. But the fact that he now has to probably rely on China to dig him out of this problem that he's got himself in the Strait of Hormuz, what do you think this does to American prestige as the superpower?
See, it is the policies of President Trump which have actually dug America into this sort of a hole where they have to actually go to other countries to bail them out and pull them out of this quagmire. I think he needs somebody. As far as American prestige is concerned, I'm sure he will give some spin to it, because he's not one of those who will accept, yes, that US is in a crisis. He'll project back home that he's doing well and everything has been done according to his plan. And at this point of time, the polarization in US is such that his supporters, by and large, would continue to support him, irrespective of what's happening. So it's only the a political population which is actually swaying away from him, because within the Republican Party, his supporters continue to still rule the roost. And for primaries, most of the Republican primaries, I think his supporters are gaining. And I think the candidates would want his support to get through the primaries. So that's the status as far as the US is concerned. And I think he'll continue that way.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, Captain Bansal, for joining us with that perspective there.